All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks so much. Welcome to part three of our four-part partner spotlight series. If you missed part one and part two, please do request it. We dug into the sort of foundations of platforms, and we also deep dove into an IP protection use case that our partner ZONTAL, who's here with us today, worked on with a pharmaceutical client. So please do reach out. My name is Lisa Richard. I'm the Director of Data and Analytics here at CSols. And today with our partner ZONTAL, and specifically Kelsey Boyle, Director of Product Management over at ZONTAL, we're going to learn how decommissioning legacy systems and/or consolidating systems can be done more efficiently than traditional migration efforts. We'll discuss how this can be done without losing access to the data, or more importantly, to the analytical capabilities you may want to realize across both your legacy data and your current data in the systems. So Kelsey, thank you so much for joining us in this last of the series. Why don't you go ahead and get us started? Why ZONTAL? Talk to us about the platform.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm excited to be here today to have a conversation with you. And so I really want to start with, I think why ZONTAL is because we're part of the scientific community and we really listen to the scientific community and listen to our clients' pain points. So let's start there. What are you hearing today from the clients you work with at CSols about the challenges that they encounter as they're trying to figure out what to do with their legacy data or their systems that might have been sunset in the past?
Sure. We hear it's a kind of a hot topic for everybody, right? It's sort of that project that's over there that nobody gets to. But what we hear a lot is there's sort of a hesitancy to get started because the effort is so daunting, right? There's this notion of data transformation or even conversion to human readable form, if you're talking instrument data, legacy data. And how do we really pull all that together without needing to first migrate it into our system of today, so that it's blended and can easily be merged with reporting or trending or analytics in the future. And so we hear a lot of conversation around how difficult it is, how daunting. And because it still sort of works over here, the justification to get the budgets approved for it because of the effort, that's a challenge for them. The other thing that we hear, which was an interesting one for us, is we sort of think of let's pull all this stuff together and consolidate, or let's rationalize the systems after we merge or acquire folks. But one thing that we also hear is when we decouple divisions from our company, let's say we sell off areas of our company, how do we easily do that if we've now sort of transformed all our data into a system, right? How do we decouple or keep them separate? And so those are some of them. Obviously, there's a ton. But those are kind of some of the ones that we hear often.
I think there's some really powerful things you're saying there. One is this isn't just like a problem that you can shove under the carpet. I think recently with one of our clients, we migrated over 6.5 million different experiments from an ELN. So when we talk about the scale that these things have to be conducted at, it really is important to evaluate what you're going to do as a strategy, right? Because if you're pulling in all these different ELNs and just dumping them in a data lake and you can't do anything with it, or you're taking an ELN and creating, and you don't have a raw data file, right? For some of these ELN projects, it is a really unique pipeline that you're building here, and you need to be aware of all of this when you're making a choice. So that's what we help our clients do, right? Is you're not just making a one-time decision, you're taking a strategy now that's setting you up for the future. Because with ZONTAL, you now have a space where you can connect in real-time data. So we can take from over 400 different integrations. So we can take from chromatography CDS, we can take from flow cytometry, and you can pull that all together with your ELN. It's not just a data lake. There's so much more you can do with ZONTAL, and that's why it's worth doing. So you think about the time, the investment. Yes, it's a process, but it's worth doing because you can now finally do something with your data. And you're also creating a space in which you are archiving your data and preserving your data. So it's that additional layer of value that you're realizing both the archival purposes as well as additional layers too.
So
So I think
that's
that's
a
really
lot.
important.
Let's dig into
Yeah.
one aspect of that. Yeah, that's a lot. And I'm sure that's one of the things contributing, right? When you're thinking of that strategy piece, right? How does putting a ZONTAL data platform in versus the traditional migration approach, how does that strategy become easier or maybe more complex, right? Folks kind of avoid it because it seems really huge. And so how does working with this platform as opposed to traditional make that easier for folks?
So because we have expertise in life science, we've done things like make Zontal chemistry aware. So you can search by a chemistry or chemical structure. You can actually draw out the structure or use metadata that's important to you, such as a CAS number or a SMILES.
Mhm.
So compared to a traditional data lake or other types of platforms out there, we are specialized in handling life science and handling pharma. And we talk about, you mentioned earlier, the decommissioning that, a lot of pharmaceutical companies
Mhm.
undergo as well during the M&A process. One of our features is access-based user controls. So you can set up these groups with different levels of permissions and think
Okay.
about how powerful that can be even internally within your company. You can set up different levels of access if you have different personas. So somebody in a regulatory group might get different layers versus somebody who's in the lab and generating data. Or if you need to make a certain part of your data not part of a study, you can set those types of parameters up with access-based user controls.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the IP protection case where you kind of want to mine through everything. And I'm sort of thinking we kind of want our cake and eat it too, right? We want to secure the access, but we also want to make it accessible and visible
Exactly.
to everyone. So it makes it a little bit challenging. In terms of you were asking about the challenges and you mentioned something, I don't remember the specifics, but one thing that we also hear is this sort of lack of trust factor on this human readable approach versus the raw data file, but also even how you string it together, the structured, the unstructured, so that if you are doing, as you say, kind of future proofing it, how real is that? How does Zontal kind of look at that? And is there a difference in the research arena versus the GMP arena?
So within Zontal, it's all about understanding the use case and the solution moving forward. So with
Mhm.
raw data files, we are going to take and store oftentimes those raw data files as well. So you'll have your raw data file, and then you'll also have, in addition to that, a transformed version of that raw data file. And when we transform data, we're going to normally bring it over to ASM, which is Allotrope's unified fair format file that has an agreed upon ontology for that type of technique. And we also are part of those allotrope working groups. We work very closely hand in hand with industry as well as other vendors to make sure that those ontologies truly reflect the science that we do in the laboratory. So it's not just this is really truly structured and mapped. And also, we are able to pull in specific customized fields when we enrich metadata. So we do things where clients might have certain fields where it's relevant to them within their pharma company. They might have a certain, group or name or site, and we can also map those custom fields as well in parallel with what's happening as we transform the data into the ASM.
So I have a couple questions about that we do hear often. So there's, when you have those cobweb systems that you haven't really gotten to, and then you hear things like allotrope in the data model, and it's easy to map it and transform. Talk to me a little bit about that, right? Because I think that's the daunting part for folks is there's sort of this image of I have to map all my data and define the meaning in order for you to be able to put it in Zontal. Talk to me a little bit about how Zontal helps with that transformation decision-making process.
So we have a team of solution owners as well as teams of subject matter experts that help you through that process.
Okay.
It is not something that we put on our clients to handle on their own. The it's a I mean, this is a partnership, right? When you're choosing to do a platform, you're really choosing to partner. And so it's a relationship that we have with our clients where we sit down and we have those sessions where we map out data. And some workflows are very simple, right? There are some workflows that are much more complex. When you look at like mass spec data or NIR data or you know, other forms of chromatography detectors too, right? But then you
Mhm.
have other, a nano drop is not going to be as big of a uplift to map. And there's
Mhm.
there's parts of the mapping that can be done in a variety of different ways, right? That said, it's not our clients always to map those things out. If in terms of like the custom file part, that's where they're going to come in and have their own layer that they add on top of the ASM mapping that has already been done internally with the ZONTAL team.
So, it's interesting. One thing that we do, because that's part of the challenge, is we really focus on phasing that data approach, right? You don't
Mhm.
need to map all at once. You can sort of phase that. Do you guys have a similar sort of approach with the decommissioning efforts that you do?
I think with decommissioning, the goal is to actually be able to decommission a database, like a
Yeah.
legacy database. So in
Right.
that sense, we do really have to pull everything, right? We
Hmm.
need to pull everything in a bundle, so that you have that as close to one of what
Hmm.
was in that legacy system, so you can actually officially decommission it. If you're always just holding on to whatever you want to decommission,
Right.
then did you really achieve decommissioning there? So it's hard to do this in a phase approach with true decommissioning projects, right? Um,
Hmm.
and that's
Yeah, let me,
different if it's a
I think that's a
database
really
too.
good point. Within a system, so I have a customer that I was talking with that has 26 different systems that they would be decommissioning. And so I sort of looked at it when I was thinking of phasing. And what we've done with others is we kind of look at it system by system as opposed to all 26 need to occur. Because then you kind of allow the learnings as well,
Sure.
as
I
you're
mean, I
going
think that's a
through.
really good way to like, you know, break down the project, right?
Right.
But rest assured, we want to bring all of that data with us, and that you wouldn't necessarily stage gate that process.
What's different? What would you say are key differences between traditional and using a platform approach that folks could realize, right? Like I mentioned that some of our customers, they sort of have this notion that if I'm putting in a new LIMS or ELN, for example, I've got to move all my stuff in and then I can move it up to a platform. And so what would you say are the key sort of takeaways for folks in terms of that difference?
I think it's that additional layer of value of what you're getting out of your data. I was walking around a conference last week and I walked through some LIMS vendors, and you're starting to notice that even the LIMS vendors are splashing AI and stuff on their booths. But if you go and you sit and watch what they're able to do within their platform, it's not really AI, right?
Mhm.
So within taking the investment on taking your data strategy to a
Mhm.
platform, you're changing the whole game because you're changing what you can actually do with the data once it's there. And you're creating that true building block to power an LLM or to do Gen AI initiatives. And I think this leads into really what next week Dan's going
Yeah.
to talk about. And that's the real value is you're not just um, you're really unlocking a total new playing field by bringing it over to a platform. But you can also do that in tandem. So you can pull over real data or data that's in the
Mhm.
lab now. We're doing use cases where we're pulling from CROs, right? So we have clients who want CRO data brought over, then they want their data from this site brought over, and then they want this instrument site brought over, and then they also want a legacy ELN brought over, right? And
Right.
you could only do that within a platform. You can't do that by just migrating to a LIMS or different LIMS.
Yeah, and I think there's an angle that Dan mentioned in the first session that's really around the ease of doing it in terms of repeatability and scalability with ZONTAL, as opposed to a traditional migration effort where you would have to handle it one by one, each system to the new system, as opposed to a scalable approach. I don't know if you have anything to add. I do remember him mentioning that a little bit.
I think that's a good point too, which is that this is going to continue to grow with you versus like continuing to have to migrate it or change strategies again. You're creating a new source of truth.
Right. And then I think we have a few more minutes left, but one thing also is this notion of future proofing, right? There's a reason these systems sort of sit out there, right? There's a skill set needed, et cetera. And we've talked about the ability to pull that data over human readable form, right? You can see it. You're kind of future proofing it. But is there a fear for folks that I'm just creating another future decommissioning effort? Like, how do they not feel like they're vendor locking themselves again with the data?
I think you're really doing the opposite of vendor locking by
Okay.
bringing it into Zontal because when you're taking it to a fair format, you still have total control of all your data. And also, we have a lot of internal resources to help you with your analytics on the back end. So if you want to then take what's inside of Zontal and pair that with Power BI and Copilot, you can do
Mhm.
that within Zontal, which is the exact opposite of vendor locked.
Yes.
You can bring it to any third party tool. We have, clients who've done things with Spotfire afterwards or Tableau. And so you're taking the best in practice industry data analytics tool and powering it with Zontal versus saying you're only trapped inside of, some space that's limited within its capabilities. So really, you're just opening all the doors instead of locking yourself in.
Yeah, I'm remembering Danielle also mentioned something to the effect of you own your data, right? I think that's a fear. There's a trust factor of is this a reality? There's a trust factor of do I really own my data, right? And I think that you guys have really touched on that as a differentiator for you in terms of choosing this over the traditional path.
You can, I mean, when you get in the platform, you could like control a little drop down screen and you can export the files and so it's really yours. It's just been transformed into an ASM format. And then we also offer tools on top that allows you to very quickly find what you're looking for, right? Because we can now search by metadata. So you've just created this really searchable space that you can search with, what you're looking for, maybe by analyst, maybe by site, maybe by smiles, maybe by technique. And
Mhm.
you can then, and it all has an audit trail, right? So you're creating this really functional space to find things quickly and to be able to use it again or within the platform. We do have viewers inside the platform as well. I can lay two chromatographs from different vendors on top of each other. Like there's so much cool stuff I can do that you couldn't do inside of LIMS.
And I'll do one last one. I was just asked this the other day about this platform in specifically. It really was, I see a lot of the platform capability and value, but playing it out in the GXP space, that's a challenge for me to get my hands around. What would you say to that person around this platform?
I would say we have clients who are doing it today.
Okay,
So
that's a great answer.
if one of your, fellows in top 20 pharma is doing it, eh,
Okay.
we can do it.
Excellent. All right, Kelsey, we just have a minute or two left, so I'm going to give you the opportunity for what takeaway you'd like our listeners to walk away with before we close out.
I think the biggest one is just again that we are helping clients today do these things and we're helping them on a scale that's pretty substantial, right? So we're taking these legacy ELN systems and we're bringing them into a platform and then we're unlocking all these capabilities that now you can do all these cool things. Plus you can pair it with what you're doing today.
Mhm.
And I think that's really the power of what we're doing here at Zontal.
Excellent. I think the power is you're doing it with real clients. I think that for a while, all these platform companies came out of the gate running, but actually seeing it in play, I think is really what folks want to learn and hear about, right? And how they can make that a reality for them. All right. Well, that's it. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for joining us. Thanks everyone for joining us to listen in. I do encourage you to join for our last part of the four-part series next week with Dan D'Almeida. We will be talking about how all of the platform efforts enable true AI and ML work. And so that'll be kind of a really nice conversation, and we hope to see you there. Thanks so much, Kelsey.
Cheers. Bye, everyone.